I didn't plan to tell this story. Honestly, I tried to forget it, to bury the pieces of myself that broke that day. But some pain doesn't stay buried. It lives in quiet glances, in songs you can't listen to anymore, in the silence between two heartbeats. What happened changed everything. And as I share it with you, moment by moment, I'll reveal things I never thought I'd say out loud. There will be parts that hurt, parts that surprise you, maybe even parts that sound too real to ignore. But if you stay with me to the end, you'll understand why I had to tell it now, why some truths can't stay hidden forever. The air in the law office hung thick with unspoken expectations, a cloying sweetness of polished wood and forced civility. Sarah sat stiffly, the plush velvet of the antique chair doing little to ease the knot forming in her stomach. Around the mahogany table, her siblings shifted, their faces a carefully curated blend of grief and anticipation. Grief for a father now gone, anticipation for the spoils he had left behind. Sarah had always felt like an outsider looking in, a shadow dancing on the periphery of their golden circle. Today, that feeling crystallized into a hard, indigestible truth. The lawyer, a man whose voice seemed permanently coated in a layer of legal jargon, began to read. Each word was a hammer blow, shaping the narrative of their father's final wishes, a narrative in which Sarah played a decidedly minor role. Assets were divided, trusts established, legacies bestowed. Each sibling received their due, a carefully calculated portion of the family pie. Except for Sarah. Her share was negligible, a token, a gesture, a slap in the face disguised as inheritance. The room swam. The lawyer's droning voice faded into a distant hum. All she could see were the smug, pitying glances of her siblings, the subtle tightening of their lips that betrayed a long-held secret. They knew. They had always known. This wasn't an oversight, a clerical error. This was a deliberate act, a final pronouncement from a father who had never truly seen her, a father who had valued her less. A wave of anger, cold and sharp, washed over her. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about the validation, the recognition, the simple acknowledgement that she mattered, that she belonged. The inheritance was a symbol, a tangible representation of her place within the family, and she had been deemed unworthy. The mahogany table, once a symbol of family gatherings and shared history, now felt like a battlefield. The lawyer's pronouncements, declarations of war. In that moment, something shifted within her. The years of quiet resentment, the unspoken hurts, the constant feeling of being less than coalesced into a steely resolve. She would not accept this. She would not be silenced, dismissed, or ignored. She would fight for what was rightfully hers, not just in terms of money, but in terms of dignity and respect. The injustice burned within her, a righteous fire that demanded to be unleashed. Without a word, she rose from her chair, the velvet cushion whispering in protest. She walked to the corner of the room, where a discreet sign indicated the presence of another attorney. Ignoring the stunned silence that followed her, she entered the office, the door clicking shut behind her like a gauntlet thrown. The legal firestorm had begun, and Sarah was ready to stoke the flames. It would be a battle fought not just with legal documents and courtroom arguments, but with unearthed secrets, long-buried resentments, and the raw, exposed nerve endings of a family on the brink. The inheritance, once the focal point, would become a mere catalyst, a spark that ignited a conflagration of truth and reckoning. The journey ahead would be fraught with peril, but Sarah was no longer willing to remain in the shadows. She would step into the light, no matter the cost. The new attorney's office radiated a stark contrast to the opulent law firm Sarah had just fled. It wasn't adorned with antique furniture or hushed reverence, but rather with the pragmatic energy of someone who understood the grit of real-world disputes. Sunlight streamed through the large window, illuminating shelves overflowing with legal texts and case files, a testament to battles fought and won. This was a place for action, not pretense. Have you ever been through something like this? Or do you know someone who has? We'd love to read your comment below. We read everything with an open heart, and who knows, maybe your words will help someone else too. Also, check if you're still subscribed. There are many powerful stories coming, and you don't want to miss the next episodes. As Sarah recounted the events of the will reading, her voice trembled, not with sadness, but with simmering indignation. She detailed her history with her siblings, The subtle jabs, the constant comparisons, the unspoken feeling that she was somehow less deserving. It wasn't a dramatic tale of overt cruelty, but rather a slow, insidious erosion of self-worth, a death by 1,000 paper cuts. The attorney, a woman named Ms. Harding, listened intently, her expression unwavering, her eyes sharp and perceptive. She asked pointed questions, probing for details, seeking to understand not just the legal aspects of the case, but the emotional landscape that underpinned it. Consider the inherent power imbalance within families, how readily past grievances can be weaponized, and how easily affection can be withheld, leaving scars far deeper than any physical wound. Ms. Harding understood this dynamic, recognizing that Sarah's fight was not simply about money, but about reclaiming her narrative, about rewriting a story that had been unfairly imposed upon her. Building on this, however, Ms. Harding cautioned Sarah against viewing her siblings as monolithic villains. She explained the necessity of understanding their motivations, their own insecurities and vulnerabilities. Perhaps their actions stemmed not from malice, but from their own distorted perceptions, their own struggles to live up to their father's expectations. This didn't excuse their behavior, but it offered a crucial layer of understanding, a pathway to potentially dismantling the entrenched animosity. Another crucial layer is the concept of testamentary freedom, the legal principle that allows individuals to dispose of their assets as they see fit. While this freedom is generally upheld, it is not absolute. There are exceptions, particularly when undue influence or lack of testamentary capacity can be proven. Ms. Harding explained that challenging the will would be an uphill battle, requiring meticulous investigation and compelling evidence. It would be a long, arduous process, fraught with emotional turmoil and potential for further damage to already fractured relationships. Conversely, Ms. Harding proposed an alternative approach, mediation. Instead of immediately launching into litigation, she suggested attempting to resolve the dispute through a neutral third party. This would provide an opportunity for Sarah and her siblings to communicate openly and honestly, to express their grievances and find common ground. It would be a risky proposition, requiring vulnerability and a willingness to compromise, but it also offered the potential for healing and reconciliation. Now, consider how this applies when you face a situation where the stakes are high and emotions are running rampant. Often, the most effective strategy involves slowing down, taking a step back, and seeking a more nuanced understanding of all perspectives involved. The decision rested with Sarah. She could choose to fight, to wage war against her family in the courtroom, or she could choose to attempt to heal, to bridge the chasm that separated her from her siblings. Both paths were fraught with peril, but only one offered the possibility of genuine resolution. The choice was hers, and the weight of it settled heavily upon her shoulders. Sarah left Ms. Harding's office with a renewed sense of purpose, but also with a profound sense of uncertainty. The path ahead was unclear, the outcome uncertain. But one thing was certain: she would no longer be a passive observer in her own life. She would take control of her narrative, and she would fight for what she believed was right, not just for herself, but for the possibility of a future where forgiveness could bloom amidst the ruins of fractured familial trust. Sarah wrestled with Ms. Harding's advice, the concept of mediation a foreign landscape to her battle-hardened spirit. It felt almost weak, a concession before the first shot had even been fired. Yet the attorney's words resonated with a certain uncomfortable truth. To engage in a legal slugfest would not only drain her emotionally and financially, but potentially inflict irreparable damage on the already fragile bonds with her siblings. The ensuing days became a crucible of introspection. Sarah revisited her childhood memories, sifting through the layers of nostalgia and resentment, searching for the genesis of the family's dysfunction. She recalled a specific incident, a school play where she had landed the lead role, a part she had poured her heart and soul into. Her father, a man of few words and even fewer displays of affection, had missed the performance, citing an urgent business meeting. Later, she discovered he had attended her brother's soccer game, cheering him on from the sidelines. The sting of that perceived slight had lingered for years, a subtle poison seeping into her sense of self-worth. If you're enjoying the story, leave a like and tell us where you're listening from. It really helps us understand your thoughts and keeps us motivated to keep going. But as she delved deeper, she also unearthed moments of genuine connection, fleeting glimpses of affection that had been overshadowed by the family's prevailing narrative of competition and comparison. There was the time her sister, despite being fiercely competitive academically, had secretly helped her study for a crucial exam, sharing her notes and offering encouragement. Or the occasion her brother, normally aloof and reserved, had defended her against a group of bullies, standing up for her when she was too afraid to stand up for herself. These memories, though faint, served as a reminder that the family dynamic was not a simple equation of victim and perpetrator. Each member carried their own burdens, their own insecurities, their own wounds. To blindly cast them as villains would be to deny their humanity, to perpetuate the cycle of resentment that had plagued the family for so long. Consider, if you will, how often we construct narratives about our lives, stories that reinforce our existing beliefs and justify our actions. These narratives, though often based on fragments of truth, can become self-fulfilling prophecies, shaping our perceptions and influencing our interactions with others. Sarah realized that she had, perhaps unconsciously, created a narrative in which she was the perpetual outsider, the overlooked and undervalued sibling. And by clinging to this narrative, she had inadvertently contributed to the very dynamic she so desperately wanted to escape. For the sake of argument, imagine her siblings each held their own similar, if contradictory, narratives, each one viewing themselves as misunderstood or shortchanged by the others. The father's will, then, was not just a document of asset distribution, but a mirror reflecting each sibling's deepest fears and insecurities. It magnified their existing resentments, confirming their worst suspicions and solidifying their individual narratives. Therefore, the challenge for Sarah lay not just in challenging the legal validity of the will, but in dismantling the narratives that had fueled the family's dysfunction. This would require a level of vulnerability and honesty that felt almost unbearable, a willingness to confront her own shortcomings and acknowledge the validity of her siblings' perspectives. It would be a painful and potentially transformative process, but it was the only path that offered the possibility of genuine healing and reconciliation. The decision to pursue mediation was not an act of weakness, but an act of courage, a leap of faith into the unknown. The Mediation Center, a converted Victorian house, exuded an atmosphere of studied neutrality. Soft lighting, muted colors, and the gentle murmur of a nearby fountain created a space designed to soothe frayed nerves and encourage open communication. Sarah, however, felt anything but soothed. The prospect of facing her siblings, of airing the family's dirty laundry in front of a stranger, filled her with a potent mix of apprehension and resentment. She considered the family dynamic as a complex ecosystem, where each member occupied a specific niche, competing for resources and influencing the overall health of the system. Her role, she had always believed, was that of the underappreciated pollinator, quietly contributing to the family's success without receiving adequate recognition. Her siblings, in her perception, were the dominant species, basking in the sunlight of their father's approval and monopolizing the available resources. If you love stories that truly move you, that warm your heart, or give you chills, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. I promise the next story might surprise you even more. Now, contemplate the implications of introducing an external factor into this fragile ecosystem, a mediator whose role was to disrupt the established power dynamics and facilitate a more equitable distribution of resources. It was a risky proposition, with the potential to either restore balance or trigger a catastrophic collapse. In the waiting room, she encountered her siblings. Her brother, Mark, a successful investment banker, paced nervously, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the casual attire of the other participants. Her sister, Emily, a renowned physician, sat stiffly on a nearby chair, her face etched with a mixture of anxiety and disdain. The air crackled with unspoken tension, the weight of years of accumulated grievances pressing down on them like a physical burden. As the mediator, a woman named Ms. Alvarez, ushered them into the conference room, Sarah braced herself for battle. She expected accusations, defensiveness, and a rehashing of old wounds. She anticipated that her siblings would portray her as greedy, resentful, and undeserving. She was prepared to defend herself, to fight for her right to be heard, to finally claim her rightful place within the family. On the other hand, the initial interactions took an unexpected turn. Mark, usually so controlled and composed, confessed to feeling overwhelmed by the responsibilities that had been thrust upon him. He admitted to struggling with the pressure to live up to their father's expectations, to maintain the family's legacy, to provide for his own family. Emily, in turn, revealed her own insecurities, her constant fear of failure, her relentless pursuit of perfection, her desperate need for her father's approval. Consider for a moment the possibility that their seemingly privileged positions were not as enviable as they appeared. Perhaps their outward success masked deep-seated insecurities, anxieties that had been festering beneath the surface for years. Maybe their father's favoritism had been a burden rather than a blessing, a source of constant pressure and self-doubt. It became apparent that each sibling had constructed their own narrative, their own distorted perception of reality. Mark saw himself as the responsible one, burdened by the weight of expectations. Emily viewed herself as the driven one, striving for unattainable perfection. And Sarah, of course, perceived herself as the undervalued one, forever relegated to the sidelines. Reflecting on this journey so far, we perceive a tapestry woven not with threads of gold and silver, but with the muted hues of shared experience and individual perception. What began as a stark division, a seemingly irreconcilable chasm carved by a father's final decree, has gradually softened into a landscape of nuanced understanding. The rigid lines of accusation and blame have begun to blur, revealing the underlying contours of shared vulnerability. Consider, if you will, the human heart as a prism. Each facet reflects a different angle of the light, creating a unique and often distorted image of reality. The siblings, trapped within their own prisms, had long viewed each other through the lens of preconceived notions and ingrained resentments. The mediation process, however, served as a catalyst, shattering those prisms and allowing the light to refract in new and unexpected ways. Drawing these strands together, we see that the pursuit of justice, initially framed as a legal battle for financial restitution, has subtly transformed into a quest for something far more profound, the reclamation of familial connection. The inheritance, once the central point of contention, has receded into the background, its significance diminished by the growing realization that true wealth lies not in material possessions, but in the strength and resilience of human relationships. In light of these insights, the path forward becomes clearer, though no less fraught with challenges. The siblings stand at a crossroads, poised between the familiar comfort of entrenched animosity and the daunting prospect of genuine reconciliation. The choice they make will not only determine the fate of their individual lives, but also shape the legacy of their family for generations to come. If you love stories that truly move you, that warm your heart or give you chills, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. I promise the next story might surprise you even more. As we pivot towards the final reflection, let us consider the power of narrative. Each of us is the author of our own story, shaping our reality through the choices we make and the interpretations we impose upon the events that unfold around us. The siblings, trapped within their self-constructed narratives, had become prisoners of their own past. The mediation process offered them the opportunity to rewrite those narratives, to break free from the shackles of resentment, and embrace a future defined not by bitterness and division, but by empathy, understanding, and forgiveness. Imagine the family as a shattered vase, its fragments scattered across the floor. The siblings, armed with the tools of empathy and understanding, now face the daunting task of piecing the vase back together. The cracks may still be visible, a permanent reminder of the damage that has been done, but the vase, once reassembled, will be stronger and more resilient than before, a testament to the transformative power of forgiveness and the enduring strength of familial love. The air in the mediation room remained thick with the weight of unspoken emotions. The siblings now understood the deep-seated insecurities and vulnerabilities that fueled their actions. A sense of shared humanity began to emerge, the understanding that each of them had been struggling with their own demons. The afternoon light softened, casting long shadows across the room as the siblings continued to speak, not as adversaries, but as wounded souls seeking solace. The mediator, Ms. Alvarez, remained a steady presence, guiding the conversation with gentle prompts and insightful observations. But the true work was being done by Sarah, Mark, and Emily themselves. They peeled back the layers of resentment, one by one, revealing the raw, vulnerable flesh beneath. They spoke of their fears, their insecurities, their desperate longing for connection, for validation, for love. The will, initially perceived as a weapon of division, now lay forgotten on the table, its power diminished by the growing recognition that true inheritance extended far beyond material possessions. The legacy they sought was not one of wealth and privilege, but one of understanding, of forgiveness, of enduring familial connection. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow across the room, a sense of quiet resolution settled upon the siblings. They had not magically erased the years of accumulated hurt, nor had they resolved every lingering conflict, but they had taken a crucial first step, a leap of faith towards a future defined not by bitterness and division, but by empathy, compassion, and a willingness to see each other, not as caricatures of past grievances, but as complex, flawed, and ultimately redeemable human beings. The true inheritance, they realized, was not the money their father had left behind, but the capacity to heal, to forgive, and to love, despite the imperfections and betrayals of the past. It was the ability to break free from the self-constructed narratives that had imprisoned them for so long, and to embrace a new story, a story of resilience, of transformation, of the enduring power of familial connection. Consider the image of a mosaic, shattered into countless fragments, each piece seemingly insignificant on its own. Yet, when carefully reassembled, these fragments can form a breathtaking work of art, a testament to the beauty that can emerge from brokenness. The siblings, like those shattered pieces, had the potential to create something beautiful, something enduring, something that would transcend the pain and division of the past. If you love stories that truly move you, that warm your heart or give you chills, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. I promise the next story might surprise you even more. As Sarah left the mediation center that evening, she carried with her not a sense of triumph or vindication, but a quiet, profound sense of hope. The legal battle remained unresolved, the future uncertain. But she knew, deep in her heart, that something fundamental had shifted. The seeds of reconciliation had been sown, and with time, patience, and unwavering commitment, they had the potential to blossom into something truly extraordinary. The true practice begins now, not in the sterile formality of a courtroom, nor in the carefully curated atmosphere of a mediation center, but in the everyday moments of connection, in the willingness to listen, to understand, to forgive, and to love, even when it feels impossible. It begins with the conscious choice to dismantle the walls of resentment and to build bridges of empathy, one brick at a time. It is a lifelong journey, fraught with challenges and setbacks, but it is a journey worth undertaking, for it is the path to true healing, to true connection, and to the enduring legacy of a family finally at peace with itself. The real measure of their father's legacy would not be found in his will, but in their ability to choose love over resentment, forgiveness over vengeance, and connection over isolation. The inheritance was not a sum of money, but a choice, a continuous act of will,